With Juneteenth right around the corner, a film director is honoring the day with a documentary telling the story of one of his own ancestors. Malachi Robinson joins us now to talk about his latest film, The Poppaw Queen. It's good to see you. Thanks so much for coming in today.
Thank you, Steve.
You've done a bunch of films. Where does this one rank for you personally with the personal connection that you have?
I mean, it's definitely alignment. You know, the last film I did was Black X, and that one was a little bit of a surprise short film. How that kind of just came from my own experience and mental health journey, spiritual journey, and I just put that into an experimental short film. This film, The Poppaw Queen, is no different. It was somewhat of an urgency for me to tell this story just because of the personal connection, being a descendant of Mary Queen, but also just being a creative and a filmmaker. The best way I know to express myself is through film.
It's absolutely phenomenal, and it was going through the screener and the trailer because you don't have everything out yet, coming soon. Mm-hmm. But the journey that you even took to go back and get this information, when you have to go back now to the 17th century to try to do this research, walk me through that journey for you.
So yeah, as we were saying earlier, you know, a lot of history as it relates to Black Americans, it's hard for us to track as far back as the 17th century, as you mentioned. So in 2020, during the pandemic, had a lot of downtime and was able to track and fill up my tree all the way up to 1680, where I was able to figure out that my earliest ancestor, Mary Queen, on my mother's side, was born in South America. She was born a free woman. And, you know, a few years passed and she was taken from South America to London for a few years, and then she was brought to Maryland and sold as an indentured servant by the Maryland Jesuits. And that's where the story begins in the documentary, where we visit the space where she most likely came to, a port in Annapolis. And from there, we see the story take many twists and turns, where we see different descendants go through the GU-272 sale. So that was a sale in 1838, where we had over 200 individuals, enslaved people, sold to pretty much finance and get Georgetown University out of debt. And this was done by the Maryland Jesuits. And you know, through that part of the story, you're seeing families being ripped apart. Mothers are deciding to either go with their kids or stay behind. And it's a part of American history that I want to see in history books in the future, just because you may be able to see future descendants connect the dots through seeing history right in front of them versus having to dig and look it up.
Yeah, and I've looked through some of the projects, and obviously you're looking for other people to do that, right? To try to connect their own dots to the past. When you talk about connections, and in this case from this one person and the descendants and her story, and you have the connections to Annapolis, and you have the connections to Georgetown University, does that, do you think, help in 2023 to try to tell those stories when you have those local connections here?
Absolutely. But at the same time, there's so much history that we still don't know. You know, with the other side of the family, where they were suing their slaveholders to assert their claim to freedom, just because they knew that their grandmother or their mother was born a free woman. They used the slave clothes to their advantage, and they sued their slaveholders. Most notably, there's a case, Edward Queen versus John Ashton, where Edward Queen sued his slaveholder, and a lot of these court cases went to the Washington, D.C. court, Maryland courts, is all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And once again, this is history that we don't know, widely know, you know, through history books, et cetera. And this is something that I had to do research to figure out.
Last thing I wanted to ask you, when you start telling your story of Mary Queen, you're obviously born a free woman, and then you say was not freed until now. Do you feel that that has come full circle now?
And I think that's why I say there's so much of an urgency for me to tell this story in the way that I'm doing it, because there's so much power in speaking your ancestors' names. There's so much power in knowing their names, knowing the stories, and doing something about it versus, you know, not knowing at all. So I think that's my purpose here, is just to keep this message going and let it go beyond Juneteenth, so that it's not, you know, strictly about Juneteenth, which is a great holiday. I love it, but I want to make sure this lasts, you know, 12 months throughout the year.
Well, I encourage people to continue to follow your work.
Absolutely.
And not just with this documentary, but keep following. There's some more information as far as screening coming up as well. Malachi, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.